Keusgen, thanks so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
Really appreciate your time. Oompher is all about inspiring people to achieve extraordinary things. So who and what during your life and career has inspired you?
Well, I think for me, Jake, there's probably been three stages of that. So, firstly, when I was younger, going through my late teens, I was actually a competitive gymnast. And I was lucky enough to actually come across two coaches who were touring from the US, and they were coaching me for 2 years. And just having that diversity of experience and people who'd come from different lands, and when you're that age, to have someone to look up to and mentor you, I guess, made a big impact. And then secondly, I also had mentors right through my career. So always choosing people who have a different outlook and a different perspective has always helped. And then I guess the third thing that's really inspired me, particularly this year, is coming across people who have a different level of challenge and diversity and challenge in their lives. So recently this year I got to know a young boy who is he's losing his eyesight, sadly, very slowly. And seeing him and his parents and his family dealing with this and putting that in perspective of your own lives and challenges certainly gives me inspiration.
Yeah, and what about in terms of, I guess, working for an incredible company like Google? Does Google as a company must be pretty inspiring as well?
It's really inspiring. You know, every day it's a wonderful thing to come to work, and like so many companies that are out there doing innovative things in the marketplace, you know, Google's just one of those. It's a pleasure to come to work, and I feel lucky every day coming here.
Yeah. So just quickly, how many staff does Google have out here in New Zealand at the moment?
Yeah, so right now we've got about 17. We've got a few roles open. So we're expanding our footprint here in New Zealand.
Yeah, cool. And what are the, I guess, are there any secrets for people that, I mean, people watching this interview, I can imagine so many people in the world want to work for Google. I mean, it's the coolest brand in the world. So what are the secrets to getting into an awesome company like this?
Look, I think, different companies have different approaches in terms of, their selection criteria and so forth. And I think if you want to work for any company that you're ambitious about and inspired by, you need to do your own research and think about what attracts them. Certainly in Google's view, we look for 4 key things that we're seeking in our employees. And some are more obvious and some are more subtle. So the more obvious are things like role-related knowledge. Can you do that role effectively? Leadership is really important for selection at Google. Then we look at the way you think. What makes you think and how you are as a problem solver. And then lastly, there's this thing called Googliness. And we look for Googliness, and what that is really a care factor and that ability to roll your sleeves up, come to work and get the job done.
Yeah, fantastic. And I mean, is networking and I guess knowing people in the industry quite an important part of it? I've heard before that some people can sort of get sponsored into roles and so on. Is that something that occurs at all, or is that not so much?
No, it's really about going through the process as best you can, thinking about those 4 criteria that I was talking about, and giving it your best shot. Okay,
and back in 2007 when you came in as National Sales Manager for Technology in Australia and New Zealand, I guess what was your personal story of how you discovered this company and got into this company?
Yeah, it was interesting, Jake. I mean, I was going through an interesting time in my career in terms of making some new choices.
Yeah.
And Google wasn't really on my roadmap. Okay. There were a few things that were happening. I was working in technology already, and even though I was working in technology back in 2007, I wasn't really aware of really what Google was all about. And it wasn't until I'd started the interview process and I'd gotten to know the people who are on the other side of the desk, and the more I got to know, the more I thought, there's so many really smart people here, and there's so much great creative ideas that I want to be around these people. And so from that moment, I really tried as hard as I could to get in, and it wasn't an easy journey. I'm very glad to still be here.
Yeah, fantastic. And what is it that you think, from having been here since 2007, that you believe makes this company so extraordinary, and why the brand is so, I guess, prestigious, and people just absolutely have a real connection with it, even if they, I guess, don't work for the company as such?
Yeah, look, I think internally for us, 2 things really matter a great deal. Number one is working on great things that matter, and solving great problems that really matter drives people to work every day and gives people a sense of purpose. And that's absolutely core to coming to work every day. And the other piece I mentioned before is the diversity. So when we're looking to bring people inside of Google, we're not just looking for people who are just like us. We're looking for people who are thinking differently, will be able to challenge the way things currently work so we can challenge the way we work. And so that constantly brings this richness in creative ideas combined with data to make it fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of Google's purpose, I guess, in the world and in New Zealand in particular, can we just talk a little bit about that? If we're going to start off with the world, what's Google's core purpose?
Yeah, so our whole core purpose, our mission statement, any Googler you'll ask will say our mission is to organise the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. And we really do stand by that. When we think about all of the projects that we're coming across, we're almost stretching that notion now when you think about all of those areas we're getting into, driverless cars and street view, for example, is one of those.
Yeah.
But then when you look at, for example, our purpose locally, our purpose, you asked, very much two sides. We're really looking at one, helping enable Kiwi businesses, small, medium and large businesses here in New Zealand, make the most of the web and really utilise technology to really stretch their boundaries and their own limits from their backyards to the streets to their suburbs and right throughout the world globally and expand into that.
Yeah.
And we're also here to help Kiwis themselves, get inspired by the future of technology and the possibility that it enables, and to help them gain more skill sets to be able to open their own horizons and their own careers.
Yeah, absolutely awesome. And I think one thing that I've been wondering is, correct me if I'm wrong, but around about 95% of Google's global revenue it comes from, say, Google AdWords. So why do you sometimes think, or I guess why doesn't Google so much laser focus on just growing that as opposed to going out into driverless cars, as you talked about before, and balloons with internet and so on like that? Is that a strategic brand thing, or why do you think that laser focus or 80-20 principles don't apply in this case?
Yeah, look, it's a good question. Our actual global co-founder and CEO was asked this question recently, and the way he put it was that with the opportunities that technology brings to solve really big problems in the world, of course as a business you want to be involved in that and you want to be a part of that. And if you're not out there doing a couple of crazy things, then maybe you're not doing the right things. And for us, we're all about test often, fail fast, and not being afraid to make mistakes. But then when you think back, Jake, about some of the things we have invested in the past that were considered maybe a little bit sort of out of alignment or not core for us, businesses like YouTube, Android and Chrome were all considered like that, which are now absolutely core to our strategy. Yeah,
awesome. And I guess it is an awesome brand story as well when you look at things like the driverless cars and stuff. It's very cool.
Yeah, it's a great thing to be a part of, and it's really important to be solving some of those bigger problems.
Okay, and obviously in terms of technology, New Zealand is, I guess, is commonly known quite behind in terms of the rest of the world in many areas. If we look at, say, small businesses, I think the stat I have is around about 2/3 of small businesses don't have websites, and equally in New Zealand, around about 21% of our total ad spend is digital versus Australia's. It's about 31 and 36% in the UK. So firstly, I guess, why are we quite behind in that area, do you believe, from over the years?
Yeah, look, I think Kiwis are great inventors. Yeah, they're really good at coming up with new ideas and innovating, but they're more conservative with adopting new ideas. And so what we've seen is that conservatism has led to that lag of investment around media. But I think that right now New Zealand is really, really well positioned to leverage and expand and drive into new domains and new markets and new industries using the internet.
Yeah, awesome. And I think it's sort of quite a commonly held perception maybe that New Zealand doesn't have the people as such to really become a digital economy. So what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, so we've really taken first step to really investigate what needs to happen in terms of education. So what we're doing is partnering with the Manai Kalani Trust to invest in the digital teaching academy, which is going to help teachers spread education around technology and computer science across the nation.
Okay, and can the government, I guess, and small and medium businesses themselves be doing more, do you believe, to help grow the technology in New Zealand?
Absolutely they can. I think the government, small businesses and Kiwis alike can think about their own level of digital fitness, if you like, Jake, and think about, am I thinking big enough and digitally enough for the future of my business, my job and my country.
So I've just got a couple of sort of quite big questions now, I guess, before we head into the quick fire questions to finish off. So having held that role of head of technology for Google in New Zealand and Australia, where do you see technology moving over the next 5, 10, 15 or even say 20 years?
Look, Jake, if I could actually predict where technology is going to be even in a year, I'd be much smarter than I am. So, if I would think about it and when we ponder over, well, what is the future of technology? I think one of the things is that, it's going to be prolific and the pace of change is only going to increase. We think about 10 years ago, there were no smartphones. And now by 2020, 80% of people in this planet will own a smartphone. So the adoption is just incredible, and history has shown that it's unlikely for us to be aware of what's coming in 2 to 3 years. But the core of that is, one, it's incredibly exciting, but two, there's an incredibly big opportunity for New Zealanders to be a part of this. And by investing time and effort and momentum in understanding how to be a part of digital, working on your own digital fitness, as I mentioned, digital skill sets, learning code and computer science are going to be core to taking advantage of that.
Yeah, and when Google as a company, I guess, looks forward towards the future, obviously a hugely sustainable company planning long-term growth, does Google as such, would it think like 100 years ahead? And if so, what would be like predictions that's what's coming, you know? Is it something that the company looks at, or is it even just way too far ahead to even think that far?
Look, I'm sure that our founders are thinking well and truly into the future, and thinking across, again, remember I mentioned our mission, organise the world's information, make it universally useful and accessible. And I think the point is that to stick to that mission means we've got a long way to go to solve all the problems related to our mission. Yeah,
and in the meantime, I guess people can upskill by, as you say, studying computer science and so on. That's a fundamental thing you believe in?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we think about industries, difficult to find an industry, Jake, that won't be touched by technology in the future and won't require skill sets around, for example, coding and computer science. It's a very safe bet in terms of where the world is going.
Yeah, and are there any, I guess, skill gaps or anything that you see in the future, or company gaps where perhaps companies need to be started in the current world and where we're going?
Well, I think, one of the gaps is data-driven business decisions. And so what I mean by that is really understanding truly where the opportunity is rather than where you think it may lie, and then investigating using data that's available through the internet and making investments. So, for example, New Zealand's a huge producer of Sauvignon Blanc. Great Sauvignon Blanc in this country. And in fact, when you look around the world and think, where are the biggest export markets and opportunities for Sauvignon Blanc? If you actually look on Google Trends, for example, which is a publicly available tool that allows consumers or business owners to have a look where demand is, so they can see where's the highest per capita search volume for Sauvignon Blanc. In fact, it's Hong Kong. And so, a consumer here who wants to start a new business, who finds a glut of Sauvignon Blanc, has a ready-made export market available to them.
Okay, cool. And we've just got a few quick fire questions to finish off. Talking about your career in general, I guess one thing we always try and ask people is, what are some of the struggles, I guess, that you've been through from a career perspective that you believe you've overcome, which have led to where you are today?
Yeah, I think two of the struggles that I would name. One is constantly getting to grips with managing a team and high performance and performance as such, and ensuring that is constantly dealt with. And it's important that we realise that for anyone's success, the success of the team is the most important, and investing enough time and effort into that. And the second one, Jake, is the diversity of the role that I've had since I've been in this business, and constantly changing and keeping up with all the different dynamics. And with all the travel, not putting on too much weight whilst you're doing it.
Yeah. And as a technologist and I guess visionary business person, what entrepreneurs and business people globally do you personally respect the most, and why is that?
So there's one individual that I met this year who's a 23-year-old guy in Istanbul, in Turkey, who is using technology to really drive democracy. And so he's enabling people, for example, at elections to be able to take a photo of their ballot paper before they submit it and upload it to a centralised website, which will then actually be able to collate that data and effectively understanding what's happening in the election.
Wow, that's pretty incredible.
So people like that who are young and driven and solving big problems using technology, that inspires me a great deal.
And when looking over the whole world as a whole in terms of technology, are there any mistakes you commonly see being made by aspiring technologists and so on that you think people need to be a bit more careful about?
I think, particularly in technology, people are maybe too fearful of making mistakes. And we often say, test often, fail fast. And I think in business, in technology particularly, people should be really leaning towards making mistakes, not being afraid of them, but being ready to learn quickly and move on.
And just on that point, if there were sort of three bits of advice you could sum up to students wanting to become technologists and get into the whole exciting technology world, what would you say to them?
Well, I'd be thinking about, learning some code, or learning computer science as a background, or if not that, if you're more on the creative or business side, think about digital marketing from a creative standpoint and the opportunities that all of those platforms enable. and to lead in that with such a creative country here, it's a huge opportunity.
And if you could look at the 14-year-old yourself and give him a bit of advice, what do you think you'd say back to him?
So I would say to myself back then, I would have said, you can do anything in the world, but you can't do everything.
Okay, right, fantastic. And the 16-year-old boy you were, what would you think of who you've become today?
He'd probably be a bit disappointed about probably the colour of my hair and how much weight I've put on. But I would say that he'd be very surprised, given that when I was 16 there was no Google.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an incredible story. I was doing a speech the other day in Auckland, in Christchurch, saying how that, I mean, it wasn't founded. I was like 4 when it was founded. It's not that long ago at all. It's amazing. So to finish off, I mean, you're a huge inspiration. Your story is absolutely incredible. So can you please look down this camera here and tell us, what are your wise words for the people of New Zealand?
Well, I don't know how wise they are, but my suggestion to New Zealand is to, when it comes to technology and the internet, think big, think bigger, and think about your own digital fitness. So when you're starting out, or when you're growing, or when you're setting your future ambitions, don't just set them for your street or your suburb or for your island. Think about the entire world. Think globally, and set your ambitions as widely as you can.
Cool. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Cheers.